177 0559 019 177. At the appropriate time, when I pick signals from my producer, we shall activate the phone lines for you to call in and contribute to the discussion. My name is Kennedy Mona. We'll be back shortly.
Every now and again, Goil makes good things happen. This time, Goil has introduced Super XP Ron 95, a higher grade fuel loaded with additives and yet sold at the same price as normal fuel. Goil Super XP Ron 95 enhances engine performance like never before. It maintains the engine by keeping it clean from carbon deposits. Goil Super XP Ron 95 is designed to burn slowly and thus improves fuel economy, making you save money after several kilometers. Goil Super XP Ron 95 gives you a smooth driving experience, that is, less vibrations. Fill up with Goil Super XP Ron 95. Now there's no need to pay more for any higher grade fuel. Goil has that sorted. Goil, good energy.
Electricity, pay your taxes. Our taxes, our future.
Because you see, without our taxes, we wouldn't have good roads, good schools, better hospitals, street lights, and other very important social amenities. When we pay our taxes, we give our children free and quality education. Talga, my money too small. Why should I pay my tax? Look, small. Salifo, it doesn't matter how small or big your business or income is. You still have to pay your taxes. The little taxes from each and every one of us, when put together, could give your community clean water or that deprived school with tables and chairs. Please pay your taxes. It is your responsibility. It is your civic duty. It is the law.
Impressive factory. If only I had listened to you, I wouldn't have been in this mess. That devastating fire virtually wiped out the whole factory and my warehouse.
Remember my misfortunes last year? Serene Insurance Asset All Risk Fire policy that I took were there to pay for my damaged stocks in the warehouse, and my machines that were affected by the floods have been replaced. My accident vehicle is back on the road thanks to Serene Insurance motor policy. Currently, my goods are on the IC covered with their marine cargo insurance policy. I was just telling Ajima about Serene Insurance.
Oh, Ajima,
tell him more.
As a road contractor,
I make sure I do my contractors all risk insurance
for the projects and then workers' compensation for all the workers on site. With Serene Insurance, they will make sure they will cover your unknown tomorrow today.
Serene Insurance, a new face of insurance. Call us now.
All right, so you all come back. It's now time for us to take a look at some of the happenings in the port and maritime industry in the course of the week. And the Director General of the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority, Michael Luguje, who is also the President of the Port Management Association of West and Central Africa, has impressed upon ports in West and Central Africa to harmonize the standards of operation so that they can be at par. Now, the judges of the Superior Court of Authority-GPHA also had their 13th annual judges seminar, which was put together by the Ghana Shippers Authority. It also took place in the course of the week, plus the fact that the Tema shipyard also participated in the Women in Energy Conference 2021. Let's take a look at these stories and back shortly.
The Director General of the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority, Michael Luguje, has called on management of the various ports in West and Central Africa to strengthen bilateral relations with member ports towards injecting increased efficiency and sustainability in their operations. Speaking during the closing ceremony of the 41st Council meeting and 16th Roundtable Conference of Managing Directors of the Ports Management Association of West and Central Africa, Michael Luguje, who is also the president of the association, urged member ports to work together towards implementing the key recommendations that emerged from the meeting.
For those recommendations that are country-specific, I need to urge all member ports that recommendations that are relevant to your port, you take them up, implement them. In the process of implementation, if you need support in any form, through technical assistance or bilateral advisory from member ports, you should feel free to route that request.
The GPHA boss also assured of the support of his office and Ghana's Port Authority to the Secretariat.
Essentially, Each and every one of us must be at the same level of standards and quality of service. That is where we can provide the best service and quality of port services to our trade.
Michael Ogoje praised PEMOCA for maintaining its place as the best ports association in Africa and spurred members on to do even better.
The association has gone through a number of reforms in the last 8 to 10 years, and the reforms still continue. If we had the Secretary General, the Board of Directors discuss further reforms that are going to further strengthen our association and make us do better than we are doing.
He also solicited for support for the PEMOCA Professional Training Center in Cotonou.
I'll use this platform to encourage all of us as member ports to support the PEMOCA Professional Training Center in Cotonou with not just sending participants, but whatever inputs we can give to that center to improve upon its quality of training programs.
Justices of the Superior Courts of Ghana have been assembled in this year's Maritime Law Seminar, which is the premier event that provides the platform for judges to be abreast with knowledge on maritime law and new developments in this specialized discipline. The judges undertook subjects such as piracy and terrorism, transport documents used in international trade, and the arrest of ships, judicial sale, and distribution of proceeds. The ultimate aim of this program is to enhance judges' capabilities during the adjudication of maritime-related litigations. Held in Accra, the two-day seminar was organized by the Ghana Shippers Authority in collaboration with the Judicial Training Institute. The event, however, has since 2019 been changed from an annual event to a biannual event in conformity to the Shippers Authority's strategic direction. Chief Executive Officer of the Ghana Shippers Authority, Benonita Bismarck, touched further on the significance of stakeholder collaboration towards enhanced clarity of legal procedures locally and internationally.
Maritime trade's contributions to the nation's economic development is very significant. As a result of this, there have been deliberate efforts to ensure that players in the space interact with each other frequently to ensure clarity of legal procedures both locally and internationally. Also, clear institutional, professional, and policy drives aimed at enhancing the development of the maritime industry in Ghana have been established.
Chief Justice, His Lordship Justice Kwesi Eni-Nyeboah, implored the judges to take advantage of such rare opportunities which are aimed at deepening the professional process of adjudicating maritime cases.
In the course of adjudicating some of these matters, the issues of arrest of ships, judicial sale and distribution of proceeds would arise, and therefore my lords and lady justices would have to be well equipped to deal with them in a manner that will stimulate economic growth for our dear country.
Speaking on the sidelines of the seminar, maritime law expert and consultant Dr. Emmanuel Kofimbia called for a revision of the country's law as far as maritime trade is concerned.
Our law at this stage is behind time, because we haven't revised our law in a very long time, and a lot of changes have been made. The UK, who we depended on for our law, they themselves have changed, so there is the need for law reform in this area. Some of our rules of procedure must change, in conformity with changing trends. Some of our things which we have captured in our Courts Act, things we have captured in the Ghana Shipping Act, would have to be modified, so that they will reflect current trends.
On the second day, the various judges visited the port of Tema to have first-hand experience of port operations and developments, as well as interact with management of the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority. Efforts to propel women participation, growth and welfare development in industry have been given another shot in the arm with the organization of the Women in Energy Conference 2021. The conference is one of the initiatives aimed at strengthening institutional capacity for gender diversity awareness through knowledge sharing, networking and advocacy. The annual event, organized by the Millennium Development Authority, brought together female employee associations from the various energy sector organizations such as GRIDCO, GNPC, BOST, NECG, some staff from those companies, female students and interns from some tertiary institutions, among others. The Women in Energy Conference also saw participation from the Tema shipyard. The Director for Gender and Social Inclusion at the Millennium Development Authority, Dr. Cherub Ntrinsia, touched on some of the gender challenges inherent in the energy sector.
If I use the example of engineers, they'll say that they don't have role models.
She had some recommendations for policymakers.
What we would hope is that if there should be a directive for every organization to sort of do an audit, to find out the issues and then develop a policy which will be approved, by the management and endorsed by them with commitment so that they would work on the problems that come out.
The head of marine services at the Tema shipyard, Isaac Eshen, explained the benefits of such programs to the company.
In a way, some aspect of energy involves transportation, and that is basically what we do, work on the ships that brings in the crude oil to fuel the plants that give us energy. Yeah, so you can see that in the past, shipyard has been a male-dominated enterprise. So we are trying to introduce ladies who are into engineering to come to shipyard and then work.
Women participants from the Tema shipyard, including the first and only female welder at the ship repair facility, called for incentives that would improve the welfare of female staff.
More training.
For yourself?
For myself. To go out there to learn different skills and adapt to what I'm doing.
Shipyard, can we also have a women association where we can come together and then collaborate?
All right, so those were some local maritime and port stories over there. Now, the yellow tide is almost at the corner, and Goyle seems not to relent on its oars. It's not leaving anything to chance, and so it went to the northern sector, that's the northern zone, and we have some goodies from them in terms of the Goyle TV market. And remember, the Goyle TV market is all about showcasing the services and products of one of our lead sponsors, Goyle Company Limited. And this one is in addition to the Asida promo that the company is running. Let's take a look at that.
Goyle's TV market train has stopped over in Tamale, the northern regional capital, attracting enthusiastic drivers and consumers desiring to know more about the company's quality products and services. The TV Market series, which has so far been held in 5 other zones in the country, is aimed at showcasing customer-friendly service stations, quality fuels, and lubricants to customers. At the Rivoli service station in Tamale, the program involved the education of drivers and a close-up demonstration on the efficacy of Goyle Super XP Ron 95, Diesel XP, as well as lubricants. BD Group, providers of the XP3 additives, demonstrated the benefits of the additives, while the quality assurance team, with the support of the Goyle mobile laboratory van, demonstrated the efficacy of Super XP Ron 95 fuel in comparison with other products on the market. Customers were encouraged to always use Goyle products because of the enormous benefits to customers.
This is what we call water finding paste. When it comes into contact with water, it becomes pink. Now we have mixed water with fuel, and then we have used XP3 to treat the fuel. And then what the other OMCs use, we don't want to mention the name. Now this is the XP. This is what the other OMCs use. Now, if we dip it in it and the color becomes pink, it means there's still water in there. If the water doesn't change, it means the additive has been able to take away all the water from the fuel. So at this point, kindly drop the two solutions into it. As you can see, this is the XP. The color hasn't changed. It means the water that was in there has been dispersed. But look at the other one. You can see that it is still pink. It has turned to pink. It means that we treated it, but the additive wasn't able to disperse the water from the fuel. This is what we mean when we say that Goyle's fuel, when you use it, it is able to disperse water from your fuel.
The public relations manager, Robert Tre, assured drivers of the quality of Goyle fuel. He advised them not to sacrifice the durability of their vehicles by going for low quality and adulterated fuel, adding that the company will not relent in serving quality products to customers.
They have demonstrated that in spite of all this, we add additives, and that is SP3 additives. That is why we call our fuel Super SP and Diesel SP. So this one, double profit. With our Super, we sell around 95. Now you know. So that if you go anywhere, somebody is saying, oh, our fuel is this at 6.2, 6.3, 6.4. Please, mind your engine. I say what? Mind your engine. So make sure you buy around 95. Then they have said ultra low sulfur diesel. So if you are using a truck that uses diesel, mind your engine and mind our environment.
The Zonal Manager North, Marian Adamu, asked consumers to rely on GOIL to get value for money from products purchased. Zone North comprises 27 service stations spread across 3 regions of Upper East, North, and Northeast regions.
Keep faith with the GOIL brand. GOIL is for everybody. We sell quality fuels everywhere. From Accra to Widana, you will get around 95. You will get additivated diesel XP. So I recommend that continue to patronize GOIL products.
In a related development, GOIL's Northern Zone has launched its ASEDA promotion campaign to reward customers for their loyalty and patronage of the GOIL brand. The appreciation promotion involved the handing over of gifts to customers who purchased products. At the Tamale Rivoli station, customers were rewarded with several items, including pieces of cloth, bags of rice, cooking oil, pressing iron, helmets, and other corporate gift items. A similar appreciation ceremony was held in Avrongo in the Upper East region, where over 150 customers received gifts from GOIL.
All right, so you're welcome back. It's now time for us to zoom into our discussion proper tonight. And tonight we're taking a look at the impact of border closure on harmonization and facilitation of cross-border trade. Now, one thing that was quite, of concern to a lot of people, sections of the public, was the border closures. Some attributed it to the COVID pandemic. And just when all seemed clear that, there was going to be some reprieve because, yes, there were thoughts that it was time for these borders to be opened. And just then we had this also bad news, and that had to do with the Omicron, the other variant of COVID. That's a new one. Now, as we speak, we understand heads of states are locked up, in a meeting and trying to come up with a decision as to whether or not to go ahead with the opening of the borders. Tonight, we're examining the impact of the border closures on trade. We've always said that intra-Africa trade has kind of been negated and relegated to the background, and we seem to be trading more with foreign counterparts than our neighbors or than within ourselves. And so tonight, that's what we're examining. And so we've assembled a team. We have in the studios with us Mr. Ziad Hamwi, who is the national president of the Borderless Alliance. Indeed, they've done a lot of work in terms of, the borders, and they've been advocating for, free borders, borders that, would facilitate trade and not hinder or hamper trade. And so he's here with us in the studios. He has a lot up his sleeves for us tonight. And we also have in the studios Mr. Emmanuel Donikwame, who is Secretary General of the International Chamber of Commerce, Ghana. Good evening, sir. Good evening, Mr. Amui. Yeah, you look... Can you put on your microphones on, Mr. Donikwame? I think your mic is not... Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much. Yeah. Tonight you look great. Thank you. Should I call you Alhaji Amui?
It's a new look, right?
All right. So
I'm trying to look regular.
Absolutely. Merry Christmas to you guys in advance, and thank you very much for obliging us. Let me begin with you, Mr. Donikwame, and find out what the ICC's assessment of the impact of the border closures has been all this while.
It's obvious that it's actually disrupted global supply chains. It's not an African thing or a Ghana thing. Globally, the pandemic has had its negative impact, and this as a result of the measures taken unilaterally by countries, the closure of borders, and all the trade restrictions, the travel restrictions. At the time, seafarers were actually struggling, to embark at various destinations. And we now getting the effect of the impact. Yeah. We're now feeling it during the Christmas period.
All right, so let me come to Mr. Hamui and find out what the Borderless Alliance's Ghana's position is on the border closures? I know you've been at the forefront of advocating for a reopening for some time now.
So notwithstanding the continuous position of Borderless Alliance to enhance the movement of goods and people across borders in West Africa, especially with focus on trade, we realized today we are speaking about a global pandemic, as Mr. Donikwame was saying, and we are talking about 5.3 million deaths worldwide and 270 million cases of COVID-19 that have been reported across the world. Luckily, in Ghana and across Africa, we are very thankful that in terms of health, we haven't faced the doomsday scenario which we were expecting. But keep in mind that when the decisions to close borders within West Africa, and I'll restrict myself within West Africa because of the issues. So at the time where the decisions have been taken to close the borders, whether land, sea, and air borders, there was the realization that there were inadequate measures at various borders to safeguard the health and the safety of economic operators, of cross-border traders, of truckers and drivers and their mates. And so, pending this decision, you can't really expect that the borders which are carrying an unknown disease at the time with unknown potential but known to be highly contagious. And so we understand the rationale behind the closure of the borders in order to limit the spread of the virus, in order to reduce the effects. And some would say actually that the quick reaction with regard to the closure of the borders in Ghana, in West Africa, and across Africa has been one of the reasons why we have seen less transmission, less cases, and less death. So we were fortunate. But we had leaderships across the continent and in West Africa, which has shown us the way. So as Borderless Alliance, we understand that, we appreciate, but we also understand the fact that the situation has stabilized a while ago. Now, keep in mind that we have not been sitting down and sleeping while things were happening, because we were actively engaging in the debates, in the discussions, in order to advocate and to organize how to localize some of the requirements which were unavailable during the early stages of the so PPEs were very scarce in Ghana, but we have managed to ramp up the local production drive for scrubs, for hygiene products, for sanitizers, for equipment, and it has come up with some positive results. Today, we are stuck in a position where the borders are closed for the movement of people, but keep in mind that throughout the pandemic, the borders were open for commercial drivers. So cargo across West Africa was moving freely, or let's say more or less freely, because there were issues beyond the COVID when Nigeria's border, for example, were closed and then reopened. Maybe we will revisit that one later on. Today we are stuck with the situation at the Togo-Benin border. Maybe we'll also find some time to discuss. But COVID-wise, we think that the situation has stabilized, and we are looking forward at what the heads of state decision based on tonight will do, because we know that there were some recommendations that were made by the technical experts of ECOWAS to the Interministerial Committee, and that the Interministerial Committee itself has raised the recommendations to the heads of states that we will begin to have a gradual border reopening as of 1st January 2022. So we look forward for how they will respond to that.
Now, have you as a group done any research to dig into what the impact of this particular closure have been?
Not a primary research. However, we have been busy in collecting secondary research from the many publications and studies that were coming up about the effect of COVID-19 on the disruptions of the global value chains, on the regionalization of value chains, on the acceleration of the industrialization drive in Africa, mainly due to, or let's say thanks to COVID-19. You realize that many countries in Africa were very coming from a very bad situation with regard to the production of enough and adequate material for sanitizers, for example, or masks. Today we have many countries in Africa which have, including Ghana, for example, which have adequate production, and we are even now starting to export. Now, we also want to think of the COVID-19 as the latest series of wake-up calls of the effect of external shocks on the disruption of value chains, especially when countries in Africa are unable to supply at least the barest minimum of their critical products.
Right.
Now, there will always continue to be this situation where you will definitely need trade, because trade needs to balance your needs, what you have, with what you don't have. So you export what you have and you import what you don't have, and then you build the capacities according to what you have. So coming back to Borderless Alliance, we have played our role in advocacy, in thought leadership, in shaping the conversation around, for example, the need to have, for example, regional vaccine manufacturing centers across Africa. Maybe Mr. Doni Kwame will have more information about that one from his perspective. But I am one of the very active proponents of beginning to accelerate the manufacturing drive in West Africa and across Africa in order to help build this critical mass of regional value chains. Let's make use of the latest wake-up call to start to build the regional value chains and to create the kind of economic development that Africa needs.
Right. Okay. So let me come to Mr. Doni Kwame and find out from you whether you can share with us some of the concerns that have come to you from businesses that take part in cross-border trade as far as this border closures were concerned. Have you had occasions where people phone your office or came personally to lodge complaints?
We've had a lot of workshops and seminars. As a result of the pandemic, a lot of things are being done digitally. We do communicate digitally. And it's a wake-up call. So we've realized that there is the need to get a WTO to renew the moratorium on custom duties on electronic transmission. So that at least the cost of using the internet should be done at the barest minimum. It's something that popped up as a result of this pandemic, and we think it should be renewed.
Okay.
And also going forward.
When is the current one supposed to expire?
The member states were supposed to have met, and then Omicron popped up, and then the meeting was called off. But the experts are still working behind the
apparently
scenes.
they're still negotiating.
So the global business community is actually pushing them to renew the moratorium. And then there's the need for the world to wake up and commit to a cast-in iron action plan to deal with the pandemic, and not to wait and then let us believe that we've developed the necessary infrastructure to deal with future crises. You know, because what caused this was the lack of global leadership. We all expected the big powers to liaise with the UN and the UN bodies like the WHO to get the necessary resources for people to do the right research, to be able to come out with a vaccine, so that at least, as we all know, with yellow fever and others, there is a vaccine and it's distributed equally. There's nothing like travel apartheid or vaccines being hoarded and then being given to people when it's even close to expiration for them to be used. It's never happened, you know. But now we've waked up to a situation whereby globally there's destruction everywhere. You may be rich, but we've realized that the poor ones are not dying. It's the rich ones that are being hit hard, you know. So the world needs to wake up and then work together and then provide a kind of global leadership that we need.
Now, you mentioned the cast-in iron plan. When you mentioned that, what do you want to see?
It's a learning process. We need to learn from this crisis. With us in Africa, at least, it starts with the ECOWAS bloc, then it goes to the African Union, then it moves all the way to the UN. And bodies like the WHO should be supported. People do not need to exit once there's a crisis and then start closing their borders to fix the problem internally, because the virus does not know any borders. You know, viruses, you can't contain viruses by locking down your borders, you know. And we in business are hard hit when it happens this way. We see inflation not as a situation in only Ghana. The inflation everywhere. It's Christmas and the prices of things are just going through the roof.
All right. Mr. Hamwe, tell us, are you aware of any projects or programs that has been initiated by the ECOWAS, as Economic Community of West African States, to ensure, you know, the facilitation of regional trade?
Not specifically for COVID, even
to reduce barriers, so to speak.
All right. So in general, and irrespective of the COVID situation, ECOWAS was already engaged in some activities in order to ensure the connectivity and the regional integration, whether physically by continuing on its drive to build additional joint border posts across strategic border posts across the region. For example, the latest joint border post in Ghana is the one at Akanu, which is between Ghana and Togo, which is yet to be operationalized for several technical reasons, which we were discussing last week in Aflao. But also, for example, by governance-related issues such as tackling the reasons behind the misimplementation of some of the directives of the ECOWAS trade liberalization scheme. You know that ECOWAS, as a free trade area, has this kind of a facility that is given to the producers of locally originated goods that fulfills the rules of origin, and that these goods, which are produced locally, are allowable to be traded across the region duty-free. But now, there are some issues with the implementation of these directives, and ECOWAS is very much in the process of working to reduce some of these issues. Now, keep in mind that, and this is an issue that keeps getting revisited, about the lack of a proper and well-structured dispute resolution mechanism at ECOWAS level. So most of the solutions that take place within ECOWAS, at ECOWAS level, I can say, quote-unquote, ad hoc, because it is on case-per-case basis. If we have cases where there is a lack of free and fair implementation of the regional directives on a national level, there isn't a specific mechanism which allows ECOWAS to follow on between the various countries, or except in mediation form, or in arbitrary or amicable dispute resolution. And so that creates tricky situations, because you don't have the ability to impose punitive action against national players or local players from specific nations, because you don't have the clear mechanism that allows you, for example, to issue verdicts when, let's say, a Nigerian trader comes to Ghana and trades in Ghana, but then he is being unfair in certain ways, knowing that we have discussed these issues for a long time, right? When trade comes from outside into West Africa, and then someone tries to move goods that are generated outside of the community across under false rules of origin. So this creates this kind of friction. So in a nutshell, ECOWAS is trying. Now the bureaucracies and the lack of clear dispute resolution mechanisms are not allowing the integration of the various countries, and that is something that I am hoping that coming to a mechanism between the AFCFTA and the regional economic communities, we will manage to have some kind of a dispute resolution mechanism that helps local producers in West Africa to trade across West Africa more freely.
Right. Okay, so Mr. Donokwame, apart from calling for the renewal of the moratorium, we are inching close to the Yuletide, and this is when business peaks for most traders in our part of the world. What are some of the challenges do you think that they face in their quest to do smooth business and to rake in the required revenue, as they usually do in times like this?
The biggest problem as a result of the pandemic is access to finance. SMEs are really struggling to get access to finance. It's gotten worse than before. And at ICC, some research is being undertaken as I speak now. And as a result, we intend even having an ICC Africa Supply Chain Summit during the first quarter of next year, just to look at issues of that nature. Because the research is showing that it's gotten worse than as a result of the pandemic, and SMEs are at the end of it. So access to market, we all know, before you can have access to a new market, you need to make contacts. And without a free movement of people, it makes it very difficult. You need platforms such as trade fairs. And I think Ziad was lucky to have been in Durban for the IATF.
Right.
And
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Right after the IETF, we heard of Omicron.
Yeah.
And I was surprised to see on CNN, they show pictures of IETF, and then there is a message complaining that it was taken before Omicron was discovered in South Africa. So the stigma of Omicron then has a problem to do with the whole of the show that happened in Durban.
Yeah.
But people need to go out there, you know, to make the necessary contacts and then get the necessary orders before goods can move from country to country. So access to markets is being hampered or being affected or impacted negatively as a result of the restrictions. And then access to finance is another thing.
Right. Okay, I'll be coming to Ziad with the same question, but let me ask you, we understand currently the heads of state are engaged in a meeting and they're expected to perhaps come up with some announcements with regards to the opening of the borders and all that. Let's find out from you what your expectations are, you know, emanating from their meeting.
I believe the period during which we had a lockdown should have been used to address most of the issues to do with the ECOWAS Treaty. There was no provision for a crisis of this nature. There's the need to look at the treaty. The treaty allows for free movement of people and goods. And all of a sudden, you've brought in restrictions, which is counter your own provisions in the treaty. And then issues of IP popped up as a result of vaccines. We need to look at the issue of IP. There's the need for harmonization of most of our laws within the region. That if we work as a region, then if you are locking borders, you don't lock the border between Ghana and Togo, but you look at the bloc as a whole. Because even if we are looking at those who are vaccinated, we know Togo is doing far better than Ghana from the figures I saw online, about 24%, 17%, Cote d'Ivoire. So as a bloc, we can look at things as a bloc instead of having restrictions amongst ourselves. That makes it very difficult. Because looking at even the current directive, if we are to say other member states cannot come to Ghana if they are not double vaccinated, it becomes a very difficult issue. Especially in the area of tourism. We know a lot of other West Africans love to spend their Christmas in Ghana, you know. But with these new restrictions, it becomes very difficult.
Now let's take a look at, I think government is coming out with a policy pretty shortly where people cannot patronize certain places if they don't show proof of vaccination, and that has to do with a card. When you vaccinate, the card they give you. Do you think that in any way would help?
I would still, it's a public health issue, so there's the need to work on that. And I'll prefer people getting tested. Genuinely being tested before getting it to be sure you do not have the virus, because getting vaccinated does not prevent you from getting the virus. People are double vaccinated, can still get a virus and then still spread it. So you need to test. But it looks like after things went down a bit, the testing rather and the contact tracing has more or less ceased. And then the other precautionary measures needs to be taken, like wearing of mask, and all the hygiene protocols need to be observed. We should go back to those days where we do more testing and then the hygiene protocols. With vaccination, I believe people still do not even trust some of the vaccinated cards people will be producing. And I know even within West Africa, we were very strict with the yellow fever card. You travel to Cote d'Ivoire or Togo, you don't have it, they won't allow you. But at the time, it gets to a stage, people can just pay and then go through. Just pay and then get a card. So you have the bad ones still sneaking through. So you are better off sticking to getting people tested to be sure they do not carry the virus.
Right. So, Mr. Hamui, let me find out from you. I said I was going to ask you the same question with regards to your expectations from the heads of state meeting.
So I will give you a short synopsis about where we were since June up to today, because we have been closely embedded as Borderless Alliance in the technical discussions towards the reopening of the borders. But let me first quickly just respond to Mr. Donny Kwame's remarks, two quick ones. It's much quicker to vaccinate a smaller population than a larger population. And we know that Togo, most of Togo's population lives in Lomé. So if you vaccinate Lomé, then you vaccinate about 20% of the entire Togolese. So we can understand how quickly you can vaccinate once the numbers come. The other one has to do with, I agree with him very much though, on the fact that we need to maintain vigilance, because what has saved Ghana and West Africa is that we have maintained our social distance, sometimes against our will, but it has helped. We have observed good best practices in terms of sanitizing and keeping our distances and wearing the masks.
Yeah.
This has come down a bit.
That's
So
basically complying with the safety protocols.
Exactly. So we have to go back to these protocols. And this is important because one of the conditions which will be discussed at the ECOWAS heads of state level is that they have to adopt a guideline for the safe crossing of the borders. Now, back in June 2020, Borderless Alliance was part of the technical experts who gave their presentations about the challenges in the region, not necessarily because of COVID, but what is actually taking place and the status. And so since then, we have helped to raise the recommendations to the Interministerial Committee on Transport, Logistics and Trade on the 12th and the 16th of June. And so we developed a kind of a guideline for COVID-19 about how to go about with the safe and gradual reopening of the borders based on best practices in health and safety. That document has been okayed on the 7th of September during the 57th ECOWAS Heads of State Ordinary Session. And then later on, the guidelines were approved in October 2020 and then published in November. That was 2020. And then fast tracking into today. We are today discussing about the reopening of safe borders. I know that there is a dynamic with Omicron. But I also know that from our research online, that most of the indicators related to Omicron point out that it seems, so far at least, from what we are seeing, that it's a thunderstorm in a teacup. And so that is why I agree also with Mr. Donikwame when he talks about avoiding knee-jerk reactions, about every time there's an external shock, and then reverting to primary instincts with regard to nationalism or hoarding or relationship between countries, whether beyond Africa or as Africans. I think we have to demonstrate more solidarity among ourselves as African countries.
Right.
And I think the reopening of the border has different dimensions apart from the health dimension. Now, looking at the figures, I have in front of me the 7-day rolling average of the COVID-19 cases across West Africa. And we can see clearly the first wave going down, then the second wave coming up in February 2021, and then coming down, and then the third wave which rose in September and then came down in October, November, with an uptick in November, which we don't know how it will go. But as it stands at the moment, it is very difficult to predict how Omicron can impact the overall assessment. But so far, the assessment has been weak, knowing that the rest of the cases have stabilized across West Africa. Some countries even are way beyond the figure in Ghana, for example, which is 0.94% of CFR. And the figures vary widely between 0.65, which is the best performance for Benin, all the way to 4.92% for Liberia. Right? So there is a disparity in the rates of the death from COVID, and it really depends. But the larger countries mainly have very low percentages in that case. So it really depends on how the heads of state will manage to discuss it. Now, this is the health dimension. From the trade and economic side, ECOWAS also is aware of the fact that the year 2020 COVID have impacted them with a decrease of 5.5% in terms of GDP, which translates to roughly $50 billion in loss in the economic development of West Africa, mainly due to COVID. And so, as West Africa, we cannot continue to go down. There needs to be some kind of resuscitation for the economic development. And then there are the two dimensions of politics and and security, which I really don't want to get into because they have their own risk assessment, which has to which has to feed into the decision of the heads of state. You know that the region is going through some very dynamic phase, so to say, and even His Excellency the President has spoken about it, some other presidents have spoken about it, people are having reactions about it, both locally and regionally, so we want to leave it at the level of the heads of state to decide, taking all factors into consideration, trade, security, health, and politics, before making that kind of decision. And then there's one story which I want to share, and it gives you an idea that it's not just technical issues that are hampering the free movement of goods and people. For example, when we were in Lomé in September, during the AFTA forum on the Abidjan-Lagos corridor, and we were discussing the challenges of the corridor. And so I posed a question to the Minister of Trade of Benin on behalf of the economic operators in Ghana, which have been stuck at the Togo-Benin border for a while, for various reasons. And we wanted to find, and I insisted on having an answer about what it takes for these economic operators to be able to cross the border on their trip across Benin. And so I received a discreet cautioning that there are technical issues and that there are political issues, and that today we are here to solve the technical issues. So we shouldn't have one eye closed. We should be very cautious of the fact that there are many dimensions at play which are affecting and impacting the movement of goods and people across West Africa. And at the level, it resides at the level of the heads of state to come up with a united front in order to look at how to balance prosperity without compromising on security.
All right. Right. So this is Iron Port here on Metropolitan Television, and tonight we are discussing the impact of border closures on harmonization and facilitation of cross-border trade. And with me in the studios, Mr. Ziad Hamwi, National President, Borderless Alliance, and Mr. Emmanuel Johnny Kwame, Secretary General, International Chamber of Commerce, Ghana. Remember, you can send us your messages, via WhatsApp line, which is right on your screen, 0559019177. Be glad to take them along the line. Like I said, when my producer gives a green light, I shall activate the phone lines for you to call in and contribute to the discussion. We're going for a very quick break. We'll be back shortly.
Every now and again, Goil makes good things happen. This time, Goil has introduced Super XP Ron 95, a higher grade fuel loaded with additives and yet sold at the same price as normal fuel. Goil Super XP Ron 95 enhances engine performance like never before. It maintains the engine by keeping it clean from carbon deposits. Goil Super XP Ron 95 is designed to burn slowly and thus improves fuel economy, making you save money after several kilometers. Goil Super XP Ron 95 gives you a smooth driving experience, that is, less vibrations. Fill up with Goil Super XP Ron 95. Now there's no need to pay more for any higher grade fuel. Goil has that sorted. Goil, good energy.
Electricity, then pay your taxes. Our taxes, our future.
Because you see, without our taxes, we wouldn't have good roads, good schools, better hospitals, street lights, and other very important social amenities. When we pay our taxes, we give our children free and quality education. Talga, my money too small. Why should I pay my tax? Look, small. Salifo, it doesn't matter how small or big your business or income is. You still have to pay your taxes. The little taxes from each and every one of us, when put together, could give your community clean water, or that deprived school with tables and chairs. Please pay your taxes. It is your responsibility. It is your civic duty. It is the law.
Impressive factory. If only I had listened to you, I wouldn't have been in this mess. That devastating fire virtually wiped out the whole factory and my warehouse.
Remember my misfortunes last year? Serene Insurance Asset All Risk Fire policy that I took were there to pay for my damaged stocks in the warehouse. And my machines that were affected by the floods have been replaced. My accident vehicle is back on the road thanks to Serene Insurance motor policy. Suddenly my goods are on the high seas, covered with their marine cargo insurance policy. I was just telling Ajima about Serene Insurance.
Oh, Ajima,
tell him more.
As a road contractor, I make sure I do my contractors all risk insurance for the projects, and then workers' compensation for all the workers on site. With Serene Insurance, they will make sure they will cover your unknown tomorrow today.
Serene Insurance, a new face of insurance. Call us now.
All right, so you're welcome back. Let me go straight to Mr. Donny Kwame and find out from you. We all heard about the Nigerian border closure and some of the things that happened and the agitations from some of the sides, clamoring for the opening of this particular border. And they thought that this was, what do we call it, a stance taken by a sovereign country to protect its interests. What were some of the dynamics that played out in this particular scenario? Because there were agitations that Ghana should also do same, that kind of thing.
Close our borders in
absolutely.
retaliation.
Yes.
Nigeria just retaliated against the countries that closed their borders as a result of Omicron and the use of false vaccination certificates. So it's in the diplomatic circles, it's quite common. But looking at the ECOWAS region, Nigeria constitutes almost 50% of the economy of West Africa. And it doesn't make any sense for anybody to think of retaliating by also closing its borders to Nigeria. I think dialogue is key when it comes to these things. And the best platform is ECOWAS. As Ziad did mention, the bloc was actually set up as the economic community for West Africa, not one to deal with security issues or political issues. But since its creation, it spent most of its time dealing with cases in Liberia, dealing with mostly security issues. And we should also know that economic issues are also security issues. Most of the current situation that we have, political problems we have within the region, is as a result of the economic issues in those countries. And I pity the heads of states of these countries because the pandemic has also made the situation
even
worse, with the exception of a few that you could link to the crisis in Libya, and as a result, you have all these insurgencies from the Sahel, moving down through Mali to Burkina, which is rather unfortunate because Burkina Faso was really doing well. But as a result of the insurgency within the region, Boko Haram and Al-Qaeda and others, it's also created some form of instability. That one is clearly a security issue. The other political issues in the other regions, I think, is linked a bit to do with the economic situations. When people are hungry, they will fall for anything, So the pandemic has also made things a bit worse now. So you need to go back to the main reason for setting up ECOWAS is an economic community for West African states. And we didn't make room for crisis of this nature, public health crisis, because we've been very, very strict. When you travel to Europe, nobody checks your health card. But travel to Togo and they are all over you for your yellow fever card. If you don't have it, they will send you back, or you will be vaccinated. So you have people who have had 3-4 shots of the same vaccine within a year. And the vaccine is meant for, let's say, 10 years. So most people are even over-vaccinated. So it's rather unfortunate that we have this situation within the region. And you need the leaders to come together. You can't do things in isolation. Because in trying to protect your border, you may even end up creating problems for yourself. So this is the time for we to see ourselves as a bloc and then invest in the region and encourage, because with the border closures, it's also pushed a lot of people to produce local things to make up for the disruptions in the global supply chain. Now, I speak to people and they are like, hey, if we can't get things from China or from elsewhere, I think we better create it ourselves to make up for the gap.
Right.
And that's what's happening at the moment. And within the region, we have a huge market, you know. And as far as we've been able to deal with this virus, I think it's about time we soften our stand and harmonize our public health policies. We work together to develop maybe a vaccine for the region, share information. Currently, ICC, we had our own regional Zoom meeting to look at the various blocks. And the MENA and the North African bloc are even thinking of encouraging the teaching of STEM, science, and then getting the private sector to invest in research labs.
Right.
And I was so impressed to hear of a private research lab in Cairo, which is encouraging private sector inventors. If you need to test any idea of yours and you need a lab to work on, you can just come to Cairo. And they believe this is the way forward. You know, we cannot depend on the others. The pandemic, it's a wake-up call for us to think of building the necessary infrastructure locally.
Right. Do you share the same views as Mr. Donikwame?
I do. And you remember that earlier I was saying that this is the latest wake-up call about the effect of external shocks. And it's not the only one. There are issues like drought across Africa. There has been locust phases in East Africa. There has been blockages with the international sea lanes a while ago. You remember with the in the Suez Canal, and it's created a huge backlog of goods. Currently, we are facing the bullwhip effect of the waiting times in the ports of the U.S. And that has created a backlog and has created the effect with the skyrocketing freight rates, and all of this is impacting trade into Africa. I think that our leaders were getting too comfortable with the fact that the countries were transforming into consumer markets, and that we were becoming the dumping ground for the goods coming from all over the world because of hyper-globalization. And I think it's about time that we think about regionalization and working at least on the critical value chains and things that we can produce and which we have, instead of just exporting our raw material. No, let's develop and add value into our raw material. And Ghana has been leading on that front a while ago, even before the COVID came. You remember that we had a digital drive which started way before the pandemic started. And then the Ministry of Agriculture have started with their own plans even before COVID came and told us, look, you have to plan for food and jobs. No, we were doing that before that. So I don't want to talk too much beyond my economic mandate.
Yes.
But I mean, we have been in the front line as a nation in looking at how to develop our own economy and to put the youth into good use, and in order to create a better and more decent life, because that is the mandate of our leaders, to create a better future for the youth of today and the youth of tomorrow. So we have to go back, as Emmanuel was talking about, to the root, the reason of integrating, because together we are stronger economically. So let's integrate more forcefully.
All right. So let me come to you, Mr. Donikwame, and find out from you, when we talk about intra-Africa trade, we cannot do so without talking about a transit trade. And so I want to find out from you what some of the mechanisms are that we can put in place to ensure that there is smooth delivery of goods. Goods really arrive at their destinations, final destinations, without any hitches.
It's the lack of infrastructure has been our biggest challenge. And as I keep on saying, yes, we can digitize most of the things we do, but the goods still need to be moved by other means of transport, either rail or road.
That's the infrastructure you're talking about.
Yeah. Good roads, rail, for bulk cargo, and then transshipment. It's another way of also looking at it. And it's the private sector also that needs to see to how best we can work with our various governments, have PPP projects, public-private partnership projects, to address these challenges, to encourage people to own vessels, to do transshipment along countries, along the coastline, and then also have other means of transport, be it by using our rivers, rail, or better means of transport to those landlocked countries within the region.
Yeah.
That's key. You know.
All right. So let me come to you, Mr. Hamui, and find out, are we really benefiting from cross-border trade?
I think at the moment, one of the biggest constraints in boosting intra-African trade are two. The first one is a lack of of awareness of the existing markets across the continent, because the mentality is programmed in such a way that we are exporting outside of the market, outside of Africa. And so we have to shift our mentality from trading with Africa to trading across Africa. That is one of the restrictions. The second restriction is about hardware, and I mean infrastructure, connectivity of the continent itself. As it stands, for example, in West Africa, the most competitive mode of transportation across the entire region is roads, unfortunately. And this isn't the case across the world. Road can be the most competitive mode of transportation over shorter distances. But then not everything has to be on the back of a truck. Some goods can be better served with rail. Some goods are even better served by shipping. Today, as you look in West Africa, in fact, it's all across Africa.
Yeah.
Road transportation is more competitive than shipping, because for shipping, if you ship a container, it has to go and transship somewhere in Europe or somewhere or in Asia sometime before coming back to your neighboring African country. And this shows you that we have a problem with the connectivity of the continent. We have inland waterways, as Emmanuel has discussed. We have rivers, we have lakes. In West Africa, in East Africa, there's the Great Lakes. And there aren't enough opportunities or investments or initiatives to take advantage of this readily available infrastructure. So I would say let us look at what is preventing us from connecting our continent more effectively using the maritime transportation in order to help our products become more competitive, because eventually the goods have to be moved from one country to the other. And this will attract logistics costs. The logistics costs of the African products are too costly, and that reduces their competitiveness. We mentioned earlier something about access to finance. Access to finance is very critical. If you don't have competitive rates for lending commercially to especially some of the most heavily affected or some of the largest sections of economic operators, which is SMEs, then you will not achieve anything about economic development. So you need affordable commercial lending rates for companies to grow, and then you need to make sure that they have the adequate infrastructure to support them to trade competitively across markets, and then you need to identify these markets and help them to equip them with the tools that would allow them to produce, to market, and to move their goods more adequately across the continent. And then you can see a significant boost in intra-African trade, because there's potential. But currently we are not achieving that.
Right. Okay, so my producer has given the all clear that I can activate the phone lines now for you to call in. And the number to dial is 020-552-8353, 020-552-8353. You can call in and then contribute to the discussion. One or two messages here. This one says, I think government should open Ghana's borders because the closure is having a negative impact on traders. And this one is coming from Isaac in Aplao. Thank you very much indeed, Isaac from Aplao. And this one says, at the moment, goods and cargo cannot move themselves. Humans are still required and are responsible for the movement of cargo to a large extent. Now, to ensure that this is not hindered, I think there is the need for ECOWAS to discuss what type of technologies can be adopted and how they can be used to mitigate a total shutdown. And this, he believes, will be important. This one is coming from Ahmed from Tamale. Thank you very much indeed, Ahmed. From Tamale, we're grateful to you for your message. You can also send in your message via WhatsApp line, which is 0559019177. There are tons of messages. We'll come back and take them. But let me come to you, Mr. Donikwame, and find out. I mean, in spite of the challenges that we have, we know that, yes, sometimes some of the traders also try to beat the system. To conform is always a problem. To be compliant, sometimes it's a problem. They want to do one or two things here and there in order to beat the system, to tighten up profits and to cut down on spending. What are some of the things you are doing as a Chimba to ensure that traders comply with the rules and regulations governing their trade along the borders?
At ICC, we always want to promote international best practice. We believe we have experts around the world who come together to look at issues to do with trade facilitation and develop voluntary rules. One well-known one is Incoterms, and then other rules for the banking sector as far as trade finance is concerned. And it's because we believe it's a win-win for all. We represent the private sector, and once we have a standard uniform rules governing trade, we all stand to win. And we actually led the discussion on the WTO Trade Facilitation Agreement because we realized that, yes, governments do meet, and they've always, the WTO has actually struggled to have an agreement on most of the issues.
Yeah.
But trade facilitation was one easy one everybody bought into because it reduces the cost and time in doing business. And for every businessman, time is money.
Absolutely.
So once he's finding some bureaucracy that's delaying him, he's prepared to pay anything to just get over that hurdle. So you may say, yes, people are cutting corners, but time is money. So at ICC, we will always advocate for reducing the cost and time in doing business.
Right. Okay, so let me come to you, Mr. Hamwe. What are some of the challenges that are, some of these traders who ply, the corridors, who ply the borders, who ply their trade there? What are some of the challenges they face? What are some of the concerns they raise when you meet them?
So let me first of all just briefly comment on what Isaac spoke about, the negative impact on border closures, because it's important to look more holistically at what is defined as impact.
Who's Isaac?
So,
you mentioned Isaac.
So you said two comments came by
WhatsApp.
Sure, the messages.
Yes.
And Isaac's message was about the negative effect of border closures on the economy. And I
Isaac
just wanted
yes.
I just wanted to emphasize that we have to look more holistically at the combined effect of trade and security and health on the borders before we come up with a proper assessment that will allow us more educated and informed decision about to reopen the border, because this is a very high level decision that has to be taken, and it attracts lots of responsibility, so it has to be a very careful consideration. Now, my concern with regards to with the cross-border trade is that we are all aware that the informal economy in West Africa amounts to something close to 70%. And many of the informal cross-border traders actually are the ones who are most heavily impacted by the effects of COVID. Now, we kind of are we find ambiguity about the classification of informal cross-border traders. Some talk about compliance, and it gives the impression as if informal cross-border trade is a bad thing. Sometimes informal traders lack the knowledge or the capacity to formalize their businesses because their volumes of business and the scale of business is too small.
Right.
And so the cost involved already as an informal business is already high enough, so they prefer to remain informal. Sometimes it has to do with the lack of the adequate information, not just the lack of the capacity to meet. And so we always engage with them to find out what their concerns are as informal traders, but also independently of that, we also need to find out about the formal cross-border trade, because both of them have different requirements, right? So with the informal trade that we have in West Africa, for example, you need to build a lot of capacity. Many cross-border traders who are in the informal trader need to build their capacities and to be equipped with the tools that would allow them to trade more competitively and to formalize their trade in certain ways. It is how to formalize the trade where we are not sure. Right? Should they formalize as an association that is trading, or should they formalize their businesses as upgrading their businesses to the formal sector, or things like that? Now, for the formal trade, we have realized that many of the issues have to do with the lack of the harmonization of the documentations on trade, the trade facilitation issues, and then the lack of adequate information, and the lack of the fair implementation of the regional regulations on national level. So if we are in the ECOWAS region, for example, and we know that this trade is moving from one country in West Africa to the other, you have the set of documentation that is approved on one side, and then you get to the border, you move to the other side of the border, and you find out that these documents need to be counter approved by, for example, things like standards, or formats, or language even. So you find out that some of their needs are slightly different.
Right.
So we try to work on building the capacities of the formal trade, but we also try to work with the informal cross-border traders in order to build their knowledge of the local trade procedures and the requirements in order to build a more formalized business and to equip them with the tools which they need. And basically, everybody needs better access to information, better tools to get their trade, and then better infrastructure to allow them to trade more competitively. So we work with the relevant stakeholders to build the capacities and to help make the businesses more competitive.
All right. Let me take this other message. It says the agriculture sector of ECOWAS countries have experienced a considerable decline on account of restrictions on travel and movement due to the closure of borders, disrupting supply chains and making access to small and medium-scale businesses. This is not good for ECOWAS, and we need to act now. There's no name on this message, and so when you send a message, please always endeavor to add your name so that we know where you are sending your message from. Right. So let me come to you, Mr. Donikwame, and find out from you. We have often said that we trade amongst ourselves like 15%, the rest is 85%. I mean, that's statistics that we have, that intra-Africa trade is like 15%. The rest of the 85% we do with the Europes, the Americas, and all that. What can we do to turn around the situation? And in normal circumstances, we should have been doing much more trade amongst ourselves than we do with the outside.
It starts with the regional blocks. I know within ECOWAS is even worse. From the figures I saw, it's like 5 to 6%. And then within, Ziad, you can confirm that.
12%.
Then within that's intra. Then inter between the regional blocks like ECOWAS and COMESA is around 44% or so. Then the rest of the world is close to 90%, And we all know the reasons. The blocks were actually, the countries were actually...
Hold your fire. Let me go on to the phone lines. Let's welcome Nanaya from Tema onto the phone lines, and when we come, you continue from there. Hello, good evening, sir.
Yeah, good evening. Yes,
please.
Contributing to the program, this opening of the border, I believe that, you see, to move away from rhetoric to reality, I would suggest that, you see, this whole pandemic has brought a barrier to the logistics supply chain. Now, the principal actors being transport operators, manufacturers, insurance companies, and the like, who have to come to the round table, especially the banks, to talk about their profit margin, lending rates, and all of that. Other than that, we begin to fall to the big markets in China and Europe and all of that. We can open all the borders today in the name of promoting intra-African trade. But the story will still be the same. So I believe that this is the time the key players, transport operators, manufacturers, insurance companies, and the banks, through JoJo, the West African sub-region, especially with this Africa coming on board, to come and think together holistically. Then they will implement a common policy, and then when borders are open, we will see a paradigm shift. Other than that, it's going to be the old story again, and then we will continue to be exported and be the dumping ground for European and Eastern goods.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Nana. Thank you very much for your call. You can also call in the number to dial 020-552-8353, and they'll be glad to get you contribute to the discussion. Mr. Donikwame, you were making a submission when the call came through.
Yeah, as taking a cue from the phone call, it all starts with demand. People, traders within our region are not aware of as you just mentioned, information on the markets that exist within the other blocks. And your first point of call may be maybe participating in a trade fair to have some hint of what goes on in that country. You may have close relatives in Europe, so getting information from such markets is even easier than getting information on the size of a market within Africa.
Okay.
So information itself is key.
Yeah.
And then you need your own, within your own national borders, your government need to create the enabling environment for if you want to go into manufacturing to be able to produce, at an affordable price for the product to be able to compete with same products on the shelf in your country before you think of even sending it out, even if it's duty-free, for you to send it across the borders.
Let me pick Ben from Takoradi. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Ibrahim. Good evening, sir.
Yeah, Divine speaking from
Divine,
Takoradi.
okay. Divine, right. Divine, thank you. Yes. Please flow, sir.
Yeah, it's Divine Takoradi. Divine Takoradi. Yeah, please, I think the closure of the borders. Yeah, the closure of the borders are not helping because a lot of people are suffering. The president should just look at certain things. I think he should look at the measures that people have to follow so that they just do the right thing. Because a lot of people are suffering, my brother. In fact, people are flying all over. But how come the borders? So the president should do well and then open the border for the people.
Right. Thank you very much, Divine from Takoradi. We're grateful to you for your time. All right. So, are you done with your submission?
Yeah.
All right, great. Okay, so let me take these messages. This one says, my name, I am Kabelo Robo by name. I live here in Botswana. Help me here. I have a package in Ghana which was processed straight from UK to enter Botswana. Due to governmental issues, it was processed in South Africa. Now, South Africa pined it to Ghana. I don't know what that means. So that it may proceed straight to Botswana. But I have not received my package yet. And I have paid for the flight. I am humbling myself. Well, I think that he has a problem. He was supposed to get a parcel from Botswana. It was processed in the UK, but because of some issues, governmental issues in Botswana, it was rather done in South Africa and brought to Ghana for onward, movement to Botswana. As of now, he says he hasn't received it yet, and he has added his address. So maybe we would pass it on. If you're watching, we'll pass it on to the appropriate authorities and get them to follow up, and you get some feedback. Mr. Robo Kabelo. All right, so I understand we have Jacob Eshan Jr. on the line. Good evening, sir.
Hello, good evening.
Yes, sir.
Great. I've been following the discussion. My submission is that, one, closure of the borders is a disadvantage to the poor in the country. It doesn't help. We in Ghana, we in Africa, we don't have the problem as magnitude as those in the cold temperatures. We in Ghana here, we have noni which has antiviral property, and also the noni handles the presentation of the COVID. Also, our temperature help us to deal with the virus. So we don't have a problem where our borders should be closed. And the rich are flying. Why are they flying? Is that okay? And the people who are using the road are being denied. It's very bad. It's a bad policy they need to think through. The borders must be open for trade and business transactions must go on. We don't lack the capacity to handle the COVID or so-called COVID. We have noni here. Noni grow in this country. Noni plants grow and fruit. And I produce noni juice. A shame noni juice is my product. Which handles the COVID. It has antiviral property, anti-inflammatory. Why are we closing the border? It's a detrimental to development of people in Ghana and other African countries. The rich are allowing them to fly. We have what it takes to handle the COVID. Because of bad policy, and people want to milk Ghanaians, they're not allowing money to be used to treat them. And you are closing the border. The citizens must be angry enough to call on the leadership to open the border. If you like, make the point that anybody who crosses the border must have a bottle of money, which has antiviral property, which attacks the COVID. and also treat the COVID itself. What we should do, not to close the borders. How can you close the borders and nothing is going on? But you, the rich, you are flying outside the country. The God let them have accidents and the plane to crash.
All right.
Why? The poor is suffering and the rich is also enjoying. Why? The borders must be open. We must call on them. Open the borders. We don't have the problem with the COVID. Is that okay? Scientifically, COVID is a pandemic in Ghana. Road accident is a pandemic. Check the statistics. How many people are dying from road accidents from January to now? And check how many people are dying from COVID from January to now. Scientifically, it doesn't make sense to use COVID as an example and as a factor to close the borders.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much, Jake. We appreciate your time. I think that you were quite a bit, but that's fine. We appreciate you. But to call on people to get angry and demonstrate for border openings, we don't endorse that. We just think that we should let the right things be done, due process be followed, and when government thinks that it's ideal for the borders to be open, I'm definitely sure it will happen. Like we said during the show, if you have monitored or watched all through, you'd realize that we said the heads of state are in a meeting, and particularly, I'm sure they will be making an announcement with regards to the opening of the borders. So please keep your fingers crossed and calm down. Things would pan out the way you probably expect. So let's pick somebody from Bokobi. Good evening. Yeah, that's our last caller indeed. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Okay. I have been following the conversation. I have a team which works in the border. And as the other brother was saying, sometimes when you get there, it's an issue. But to a point, if you critically look at things, sometimes disobedience on part of citizens also causes some harsh measures to be taken. And when we are asking borders to be opened, for me, I want the border to be opened. There's no way I don't want it to be open because it's affecting my business. But on the contrary, sometimes when you go into, when you have trailers and other things, you follow protocol, and because of machines and other things you are allowed to. You see that the way Ghana is serious and anxious in vaccinating its people, other countries are not serious like that. Because they don't even care about any protocol. So if we are calling the border to be open, it's the right thing to be done. However, we shouldn't use serious sentiment and attack people who can help us. Because at the end of the day, remember the last statement that in the previous government they were when the president of the nation was speaking to us, he said we can bring the economy back to life. But how to bring the dead people to life? It's serious.
Absolutely.
You can see that the government is even chasing people to freely vaccinate. What are we doing? We are running away from it. So the measures that the government and other authorities put in place to protect us, to open the borders, we the citizens are ignoring it. So therefore, it makes it very difficult and challenging for them. Imagine they tell all of us, put on your nose mask, follow protocol.
Frank, point well made. Point well made. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much indeed. We appreciate your call. Indeed, you are our last caller. We have barely 2 minutes to go. And so this one says, good evening, sir. Please, must one pay some money before crossing any of the West African borders by road? This one's from Daniel Afrani. And this one says, please, how are you dealing with Benin issue with regards to payment of duties on cargoes transiting through their country as far as free movement of goods and persons through ECOWAS member states is concerned? I think that these are very legitimate questions. Please make a date. The one that sent this message, and watch the abridged version of on GTV at 8:30 p.m. Your answers will be given to you there. We'll get the answers from Ziad and then Mr. Doni Kwame, and then we'll send them to you. Just 30 seconds, your closing remarks, because we have barely 1 minute now to go.
My quick one about COVID is that in total in West Africa, we had 10,314 deaths in COVID, and that makes that makes barely a glitch out of the 5 million deaths worldwide. So I think that in terms of health, West Africa has fared well, but now it's time to look at how to resuscitate the economy. And it will take all hands on deck to look at all the aspects where we can work together and collaborate by public-private partnerships and finding ways where we can join each other's hands to start again, and then to learn from the lessons and the challenges that COVID has emphasized. We need to become more self-reliant in certain areas. We need to collaborate more in order to become more competitive and to have a better voice in unity as a bloc in West Africa.
All right. Mr. Donokwame, 30 seconds.
Yeah, I believe the private sector is ready to assist our various governments to help restore travel, preserve the tourism sector and other sectors affected by the pandemic, and then help build infrastructure to safely minimize the economic damage caused by COVID.
Right.
That's the way forward.
All right. Thank you very much indeed, gentlemen. Tonight we've been discussing the impact of border closures on harmonization and facilitation of cross-border trade. And with me in the studios have been Mr. Ziad Hamwi, National President, Borderless Alliance, and Mr. Emmanuel Donikwame, Secretary General, International Chamber of Commerce, Ghana. My name is Kennedy Mona. We thank you so much. Many thanks goes once again to our sponsors, Ghana Revenue Authority, Goel Company Limited, Ghana Port and Harbours Authority, Serene Insurance, and Ghana Link Network Services, the operators of the integrated customs management system at our port. Remember, the abridged version of Iron Port is aired on Ghana Television every Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Have a super week ahead as we anticipate to meet you again next week with another wonderful edition of Iron Port. Good evening.